What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Gregory Tate here with Team Tate Ministries, another edition of Tate Talks, where we are discussing my latest book, The Decline in Black Men's Church Attendance. And we just been having a good time in part one, part two, and part three. I'm very excited to have with us today in our Tate Talks from a therapist perspective, someone that I love, admire, someone that is very near and dear to my heart, that is very special to me. I can't even list his resume because it's just too long and all the stuff that he's accomplished. But he is a husband. He is a father. He is a therapist. He is a pastor, and I owe this young man quite a bit of deal with respect and props. Without him, I would not be in the position that I am at. Without him, I wouldn't have a wife without him. So I greatly love and admire him, and there's none other than the man, the myth, the legend, Reverend Elwood McDowell is with us today. Um, Go ahead, Dad, and say hello to the folks, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Hello to everybody. It's good to be with my son-in-law today, my son really, on this podcast slash interview. And I'm looking forward to talking about this issue, which is near and dear to my heart, Black males and the church and our lack of involvement.
Right, exactly. So we are again, if those that are just tuning in that don't understand what is going on, it is simply this. I wrote a book on my dissertation on it is entitled The Decline of Black Men's Church Attendance. And literally, if I could just give credit to where credit is due, it was birthed from this man that is on stage with me right now. And following his leadership, I literally asked permission to even go upon this topic because it is so near to his heart. And so I was passionate about it as well. Him being my pastor, being my mentor, and so I was very passionate myself, and that's where I ran with it. But again, part one, we did it from a pastor's perspective. Part two was last week was on fire. We had Dr. Roy with us, and it was from a communal perspective. And this week, we are going from a therapist perspective, something that is taboo in our community, a therapist, mental health. I know now has been quite popular in the last 10 years, really. Now mental health, but it's always been quite a bit of a problem, quite a bit of a concern that we are now just laying eyes on in the past, maybe decade and a half about our mental health. And so I want to definitely get your expertise on it, Dad, on this very topic. But before we even do that, I wanted to show just a very small statistic that is very pertinent to what we're talking about. And this is coming from, an accredited sources and approved health. It says studies have shown that the regular participation in religious activities is associated with lower rates of depression, anxiety, and mental health issues. And it has been shown clinically that people that attend church on a regular basis actually live longer. And so that is something that struck a chord with me. That is amazing to me. That just showing up to church on a regular basis has these even natural benefits and these mental health benefits to it. But we're going to dive right in, and we're going to just, we're going to pick your brain, Dad, as far as what is going on. And so one of the, oops, I did that one already. So one of the questions we have for you, Dad, and diving into the mental health perspective of this is from a therapist perspective. What is the psychological effects? Do you believe the absence of a Black man in church communities has on individuals and families within the Black community?
Oh, I think for sure, even though there's a lot of talk today about um, religion versus spirituality.
Mm,
Um, I used to really be proud of the fact that I felt like the Black church is is both religious and spiritual. That
mm,
it is not just institutional religion, because there's so much personal and communal spiritual experience together, and it is important to recognize that, because some people say, well, I'm not religious, I'm just spiritual, I don't go to church.
Right.
That's begun to be a new thing, because a lot of people are exposed to uh, recovery from drugs and alcohol, and that's spreading into the families now. And I'm so glad that people are much more open to therapy and to things related to recovery. The Oxford movement, which underlies the AA movement and NA and all of that stuff, started in the Episcopal Church in New York.
Wow.
As an effort to make church more of what it should be. The New Testament church had small groups that met daily from house to house.
Correct.
And those groups, the second thing on the list of what they did, starting with the preaching and teaching of the word, was fellowship. I'm absolutely convinced that that was transparent fellowship. It wasn't just people using church jargon.
Right.
And that produced powerful community in small groups. And then I think it enhanced the sense of community in the larger group. And even when we have cell groups in churches, all too often they study the word and they love each other and see after each other to some degree, but they do not open up about their struggles as much as it ought be. And really, I do believe that the lack of going to church definitely affects the mental health of not only the males, but it affects the families, because the male is the leader.
Yes.
And I'm for the first time in my whole ministry of many, many, many years, decades, I have less men starting right before COVID and leading into where I am now. Just now I'm starting to make some inroads again, because I feel like one of the big deals about, I'm just throwing this in here, you asked one thing, I'm throwing in something else.
No, keep flowing.
Mental health when it comes to Black males, that Franz Fanon, the Black psychiatrist from Martinique, when he published The Wretched of the Earth way back in the 50s, said that the oppressed have an internalized anger against the oppressor that they take out on each other.
Yes.
And built into the mental health issues of our people is an anger against the oppressor that we hold back and accept. Unconsciously, we've become like in a strange codependent relationship with our oppressors. We want them to somehow approve of us. Even when we are angry, we'll say things like we don't exist and all of that. I don't need anybody to tell me I exist. My Father in heaven on the inside tells me I exist. But the Black person has to embody that anger more. And I'm just asking myself about that. Have I lost touch with the need to push forward in such a way that males are attracted to the church, where they can also deal with that anger that affects them, and it's generational trauma,
right?
And if we don't deal with that, we're not going to get as many men in church. I've jumped ahead of us here. Go ahead, Greg.
No, it's all right. So let's go off roading a little bit. We're going off the beaten path a little bit. So since you want to dive down into there, what is it that, from your professional and mental health perspective, and also as a communal leader, what is it? Why is mental health so taboo for us? Why is it, especially for Black men? Why is it that we are taught to just hush and to really just to shut up and keep going, no matter how traumatizing life has been for us? And literally, I heard it said this way: the only emotion that we are taught to have and to show is what you touched on, is anger. That's the only emotion that Black men are allowed to show and have and put on display. But we can see as time has go, it has even medically, holding on to that anger is so detrimental to our health. It produces so much stress and so much different chemicals in our body that breaks it down over time. And even spiritually, anger, it says, we can be angry and sin not, but what is that why is it so taboo for us, especially as black men? That it Are we scared? Is it something that
Sometimes
are
we're,
we just afraid of being vulnerable because we don't know what vulnerability looks like or feels like? What is that in your professional experience?
I believe that it's mainly fear of reprisals in employment settings, in college settings, etc., that we keep our mouth shut
Mm,
and just kind of try to fit in.
mm,
And even when we feel like we've been stepped on sometimes.
right,
And it's true that you can't, when you're strategic, you cannot fight every battle. You got to choose your battles
right.
because you cannot win them all. But even with that said, I think it's a fear of, at one level, a fear of reprisal in terms of losing something that we do need, whether it be a job advancement or whatever, or it can be a fear of getting in trouble in educational setting, etc.
Hmm. Right.
And it affects us. And when we are outside of the situations that we find ourselves in now, having been more integrated into the system,
Hmm.
um, I will hear some brothers complain. Well, some I hear complain who do speak up when they need to,
Right.
and they still need to vent some. Um, we can be angry and channel that anger in a strategic direction. We need
Hmm.
a kind of cool anger, which is a more spiritual anger where God has gotten in it enough. Like young Moses killed an Egyptian
Right.
because he was beating up an Israelite. And the next day, he tries to intervene between two Israelites who are fighting each other. And they say, "What are you going to do to us? You're not our leader, basically. You're going to do the same thing to us you did to that Egyptian yesterday." So
Right.
Moses had to go through 40 years of preparation to get to a point where he had cool anger,
Mm,
strategic anger.
mm.
And our churches need to embody that a lot more. In every community, there are Black churches that are involved in the Black struggle, but they are the minority, actually. It may be a couple of the largest ones, but a large number of them are just kind of treading water. And
Right.
it's so important that we start to um, embody the Jesus of Luke 4, who stood up and read from Isaiah chapter 61. One of the things that he said, aside from healing broken hearts, which is part of mental health, he said, well, that's in the King James Version. Not
Right.
every script has that particular line, but it's in Isaiah that he
Right.
was quoting. And he said, to let the oppressed go free. So part of being a witness for Jesus is to fight for justice for the oppressed.
Hmm.
And I don't know why we think we can just talk about personal spirituality in a sermon, and not every sermon has to deal with social justice, but there's got to be some frequency, not only in sermons but in involvement of the church in the struggles of the community.
Very true, and something that I learned from you over the time that God is not a God that sits idly by. But you said something so profound that sticks with me. He's a God of our story.
He is.
So he's a God that is engrafted in our story. He's not a God that just sits on the sidelines, but he's woven into the tapestry of our history. He's the Jesus that sits on top of Jacob's well
Yes.
and visits you when nobody else would bother to even talk to you because of your status, because of your social status, and
Yeah.
because of your communal status.
Mhm.
But he's engrafted in every aspect of our lives. And you know, since we're going down this path, do you believe that because I believe that that when Jesus healed, it wasn't just a specific healing. I believed he was in the wholeness of the person. So when people receive their healing from him, do you think there's a mental health component as also where part of the mind was healed as well because they were dealing with that ailment for so long that they identified? Even there was some scriptures even that they even say the person's name. They just said a blind man or a woman with the issue of blood. It wasn't their name. It was they were literally identified with something with their ailment. So
Yeah.
when Jesus showed up on the block and healed them, do you think that also had a mental health component that it helped their mental status as well?
Oh, absolutely. You can imagine the man who sat by the pool of Bethesda for 38 years, at least he had been in his condition for 38 years,
Mm-hmm.
um, was jubilant when Jesus told him to get up and walk and pick up his bed and walk. He got up and picked it up and walked
Right.
for years, sitting and waiting. Um, and finally, just getting to a point when Jesus asked him, "Do you want to be made whole?" He said, "I don't have anybody to get me down to the pool fast enough, and then I can't get down there fast enough." He ran out of people and he ran out of self. And then
Wow.
Jesus empowered him to get up. We have an empowering God, not a codependent God. He
Come on.
empowers you.
Yeah.
I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, who gives me the wisdom, etc. That doesn't mean that he doesn't move a few mountains in our lives once in a blue moon. Most of it is giving us the strength to climb it and the wisdom to know how to get out, get around it, or whatever. And
Wow.
we need to revel in having the power from Christ himself to engage life as it is
Mm.
from the point of view of the witness of being Black in America. America has little chance. A great act of love to our white brothers and sisters, whether they be Christian or not, is to put boundaries up
Mm.
about we will not cooperate with all this nonsense. And we are all too often, liberals in the white community are trying to define how we are to cooperate, how we should be freed.
Mm.
Anybody, I'm a Malcolm X in that regard. I believe in nonviolence.
Yeah.
I believe in nonviolence because I'm a follower of Jesus and I believe in what Martin's movement was about in many ways. However, Malcolm was right. I don't need people to save me.
Right.
Liberal community needs to be spending a lot of time saving itself and dealing in its own community with issues that are there. And we do need sometimes allies in some situations,
Right.
but they're allies. They're not people who take over. And because then, again, you have a codependency of a different sort.
Yes, exactly.
We're codependent on one hand. We want conservative folk to stop being so hateful and approve of us,
Mm-hmm.
or we want the liberals to approve of us and feel sorry for us at times.
Oh man.
We don't need either one. We need Jesus on the inside and the Father and the Holy Spirit, and we need them to empower us to have the wisdom to do what's necessary. Famous Boysian double consciousness, seeing oneself in someone else's eyes,
Yes.
is so on target when it comes to mental health.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wearing some kind of mask. The whole task of psychotherapy is to at a reasonable pace strip the mask and uncover the real person.
Mm-hmm.
And the person who's been traumatized, etc., slowly comes out of that cage as the real person who shut down at some point because of stuff they've been through.
Mm-hmm.
And it's time for the Black community to come out of the cage of trying to be someone that we're not.
Ooh.
No matter how high we get.
Ooh.
I'm so glad Barack had folks playing basketball in the White House. Amen. Be yourself.
Right.
Where you are in Pharaoh's house, be you. And we can be so much more effective to help not only, first of all, ourselves, And then
Right.
secondarily, also to love and help people who are outside of our own community, including some of our very enemies.
Wow. Well, that's a whole nother subject right there for our enemies, because it's hard to just do it for yourself, but you also know that your life is not your own, but it is a witness for everybody else to be on display for.
Yeah.
That is something that is that's challenging, that we are what we are called to do. Moving on to our next question. From a therapist perspective, what psychological effects do you believe the absence of Black men in church communities has on individuals, families within the Black community?
Yeah, let's assume for a minute that many of the women who are in church have husbands who are not. Um, and the effect of that is that the real leader of the family is not um, engaged in the central thing.
Mm,
Someone shared with me today that he believes he is now the real leader of his family
mm,
because he, without being controlling, he's inspiring his children to study the word with him in a way that's not super fake religiosity. He can deal with them in terms of what their real life experience is in their own lives, and then draw them into more. They do devotion.
mm-hmm.
Uh, the kids do their own devotion, and then they study the word together too, and they do it. And even his former wife and her husband have taken up the cross in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
doing something similar. And to be the head of your household does not mean dominating your household,
That is good.
leading with the power of love. I often quote, I often say about John Wooden, he had 9 consecutive NCAA championships,
Mm-hmm.
never yelled at his players. He
Wow.
got up early in the morning reading his Bible, spending time with God.
Mm-hmm.
And his authority flowed from Jesus spoke, it says, that the people were surprised he spoke with authority.
Mm-hmm.
If you want real authority, if you're feeling anxious and all out of sorts, your kids are going to be anxious and all out of sorts.
Boy, do I know that to be true.
And when the Holy Spirit is abiding in the parents, then the kids can feel it. They're real free. They're cooperative,
Right.
loving towards each other, et cetera, et cetera. So that in order for the family to function well, mental health wise, the father needs to be spiritual
Wow.
and in touch with God.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing. I love how he said, not dominating as far as tasking and being domineering, but leading. There is a difference between. There's a very strong significance in doing so. And how does a man learn that, especially, Dad, where 50 to 60% of us don't see that modeled in the house? How's a man
That's
adopt that and use that in his everyday practice, and it becomes part of their psyche and part of their being, is to lead first and to dominate? How do we do that when we don't see that modeled in front of us?
the biggest thing is I've got to discover for me that I don't have to fix me by guilting and shaming myself.
Wow.
If I do that to myself, with even the church context, which is supposed to be about grace,
Right.
still trying to measure up to the law, then I'm going to carry that dominating. I'm trying to dominate my own self. So that transfers over to how I treat my family and other people.
Wow.
And so really getting to the point that the man at the pool of Bethesda got to, where I know I can't get up and nobody else is there to help me get up.
Right.
I need Jesus to empower me to get up and walk. And only him, not me doing something to fix myself, can make the difference. It's just so much easier. My yoke is easy and my burden is light, he said.
Right.
And we want to make it hard by trying to judge ourselves and fix ourselves when he's the only one who can fix us. And when we get that, and psychotherapy can help you get to a point where you realize that you have to embrace yourself, even
Wow.
with your flaws,
Wow.
and that underneath my behavioral flaws is a woundedness that comes from the trauma I've been through, including racism. And I need to be able to not, the wounds will never completely heal,
Mm.
but I can have enough grace to embrace that I'm a wounded person, and I can sit with both pain and joy at the same time. And when I can do that,
My God.
I can function in this crazy America that we're in a way that that can liberate me mental health wise, spiritually, physically, etc. Because there are physical benefits to being mentally healthy and spiritually healthy.
Right.
Doctor, I'm trying to think who it was. Um, it'll come back to me. Let's move on.
Absolutely. Let's go on. Those are just a small reset. Those that are just logging on, we are talking about my book, The Decline in the Black Man's Church Attendance, that is now available on Apple and on Google, and is also on Amazon. And for those that haven't got their copy, please get your copy today. Join the conversation. We are getting good. We're getting into the meat of our conversation, and I have our special guest, my pastor, my mentor, and happens to be my father-in-law, um, Pastor Elwood McDowell. We're approaching this very consequential topic from a therapist's perspective. And leading into the next question I have for you, Dad, is how does spiritual and participation in church life impact mental health and the resilience among Black men? Because we were talking about it earlier that we are allowed to show anger, but like you were saying, that we have a natural resilience towards our oppressor and things of that nature. And can you share insights or research on a therapeutic benefit of spiritual involvement?
Yes. There. Well, there was one article that you quoted that talks about from the National Center for Technical. It had to do with something technical, and I looked in the APA database and could not find anything along the lines of exactly how the mental health and resilience among Black men is affected by church attendance, et cetera. However, there is data on the broader population, which includes a representative group of Black people, and it does show from the results, at least of some of the stuff that was done for that one article that you quoted in your book. It shows that men who do go to church, and women too for that matter, have more mental health benefits. They live longer, they have more peace, they have more hope, and hope is a big deal because when you
Yes.
lose hope, and hope is not intellectual. It's not, I know the why of the universe, as some people are always searching for. Hope is a gift from God that everything is going to be all right. I
Right.
may be Friday, but Sunday's coming.
Right. Right. Exactly. Uh, I'm trying to say this. How do I say this correctly? Since you want to go on that, let's just stay on that hope, uh, because I think hope and mental health go hand in hand. Because why am I seeking help if I'm not hoping to get better? If I'm
Right.
not hoping to become well?
Believing that it's
Um,
even possible.
it's even, yeah, exactly. How it's even possible? Can you go into the power of hope and a little bit more into, especially the mental health uh, for era where, you've told us countless of stories of people that you have seen that they felt hopeless. And the moment that they received hope, what kind of illumination mentally it was for them. And you saw the transformations and breakthroughs in therapy with these individuals. But
Yeah.
the power of hope. Can you please, go a little bit further into that one?
A person can have so much trauma that they're kind of up to here.
Mm.
There was a woman who came into residential treatment a few years ago who was one of the lowest, most depressed people I've ever seen.
Mm.
She saw no purpose at all in her life. And I believe that there is no way of discerning intellectual purpose in the way that sometimes we think there is. I think when trouble comes, it strips you of the mind's attempt to make meaning that's beyond the capability of the mind to make meaning of.
Wow.
And she wrote, because she had an abusive alcoholic father the entire time she was growing up, who treated her terribly for years and years. She wrote a very lengthy letter detailing how she felt in all those situations in terms of how her father treated her. And when she got through sharing that letter and the accompanying feelings that went with it with her primary group, she said at the very end of the letter, the last statement was, "And with all of the love I can muster, I'm letting you go."
Wow.
Oh my God. It was like she was an entirely different person after that.
Wow.
She had to honor her right to be angry with him and to be hurt, et cetera, by expressing it. And then when she got it out of her system, she then had to also admit that the real biggest reason why she carried it was because she loved him. But loving means letting go. It doesn't mean that I own this person's pain, their guilt, or whatever. If I love you, I'm not, you don't own me. Only God owns each one of us.
Right.
If I love you, I can let you go. And that to me was one of the most powerful. I've seen so many situations, patients that I've dealt with myself. This was a person who shared her story with me, but who also shared it with her primary group. And it's just once the person kind of gets the trauma out and lets go of any accompanying shame, because they try to carry the shame of the perpetrator.
Right.
Because they love that perpetrator.
Right.
They trusted.
Right.
Then they can move forward and have hope without understanding. Kierkegaard said that this is one, my favorite white Christian scholar said that faith is laying hold of uncertainty with passionate inwardness. Faith is not a whole bunch of intellectual name it and claim it and all this different junk. You don't understand the mind of God, and you can't command God.
Right.
But you surrender to the beauty of mystery. It's
wow.
To live with the mystery of trusting God without understanding Him.
Wow.
And you can be free then. A little kid ain't trying to understand everything.
Nope. They sure ain't. No.
And I have Christian friends, one of whom has passed on, who spent almost his entire life trying to search for the answer. Going from one belief system to another.
Right.
Trying to find the right rational solution.
Right.
And he left his belief in Jesus as the Messiah. Really, he believed that he was not the Son of God. He was just, a good teacher who taught him about this and that. And he never got to the point where he really accepted that he could not be changed without grace. And, it's tragic. People are even taking philosophical systems and combining them with understanding the scripture.
Right.
Marxism does not, even though I believe that the early church was very communal, more so than the Marxist community, and that the nature of even the early Hebrew times, every family was given the same exact size plot of land, across Jordan, et cetera, et cetera. They had Jubilee rules and all that stuff, but that stands on its own 2 feet. It doesn't need dialectical materialism, Hegelian Marxist thinking to make sense out of life. So people get caught up more in the ideology.
Right.
The beauty of the human being is that they're even opposing.
Right.
and the beauty of themselves. That's the worst tragedy. Because as long as I'm trying to fit myself into some scheme, some grandiose intellectual ideology, I'm not dealing with the power and beauty of the Spirit of God that lives in me, who can give me the freedom to be everything I need to be in each situation that
Mm-hmm.
requires me living with mystery.
Right.
Got a prefixed kind of intellectual framework I'm trying to fit everything into. I'm not letting myself be as spontaneous as I need to be.
And in that mystery, let's dive a little, let's push into that a little bit more. Um, do you think that we, especially as brothers, have a hard time with that because we have such a knack and such a need to be in control?
Yeah.
Uh, do you think that because everything in our life feels so scripted, we have to do this in order to receive this? We have to behave this way to receive this reward, and and we have to perform, and we get a lot of perform orientation mentality that we have to perform to get X, Y, and Z, and therefore mystery is difficult for us to even fathom. And even in mystery, let's talk about a little bit deeper, Dad. In mystery, it requires me to be something that I'm very hesitant, especially since me and Maisha moved down here. I see a lot of men very hesitant to be this very word. It's a very cuss word, and especially with brothers, and that cuss word is vulnerability. It's something that we're scared of. It's something that we don't want to talk about. It's something that we don't want to dive into because we equate vulnerability of with weakness.
Yeah.
If there's something wrong with me, if I'm being vulnerable, there's something, there's a defect with me that I'm being vulnerable. Oh, being vulnerable that's a female thing. Oh, that's a feminine thing. And for me to be vulnerable means that I'm weak and I'm going to be made fun of. And as a brother, only thing I have is my rep. Only thing I have is my reputation. Only thing I have is what I am perceived as in the various sectors in my life. So if you think that I'm weak, then that totally defeats me being the masculine statue that I am trying to portray in front of you.
Right. Um, Instead of living for manly honor, which is constructed by communal values, I have built in a need to stop people from walking on me.
Mm,
I don't need a construct for that. Um, but I am not one of those who likes using the term toxic masculinity. I believe that some of the aspects of what's been called toxic are toxic only because we haven't let the other side of our masculinity come out.
wow.
There's nothing wrong with being a strong man. There's nothing wrong with sometimes appropriately expressing your anger.
Right.
It's just that I need to also be able, and this is one of the things that you quoted in your book too, is that um, boys who were raised by men who were um, affectionate
Mm-hmm.
turned out with better mental health than
Yes.
boys who were raised by men who were only disciplinarians.
Right.
Which again, Mr. I'm thinking about John Wooden again. He got more out of brothers straight out of the hood during the Black Power movement. They love this man. I mean, to me, it's of course I think John Thompson embodied that too, and so do some other African American coaches who've been successful, Tony
Right.
Dungy, etc. Dungy talks about a quiet strength,
Right.
and there is a way to be strong and male and not a wuss, and at the same time be loving.
Mm-hmm.
And we can do that. It's in us to do it. We can be a whole man. Men in Africa combine those. I'm not saying they're ideal and perfect over there, but I
Uh-huh.
am saying that they express affection a lot more to each other even than males feel like they can express to each other in this Western culture context.
How does the church cultivate a space for men to be okay to be angry and give them a healthy space. Because again, I'm telling them my age, but I'm still young enough to where I didn't, I wasn't around the Dr. King era. I wasn't around the Black Power movement. But part of it that made the church so powerful is they created a space for brothers and for Black families to feel safe. Like, I'm dealing with this. This is where I'm hurting. This is where I'm vulnerable at. This is the area that I'm bleeding in my life. And I don't want to speak ill will about the church because we love the church. We are the church, but it seems that we're getting further and further away from that ability to create space for people to be where they are. It's almost like we're shoving scriptures down the throat. It's almost like we're just we're putting a band-aid on a cancer, and it's almost like a factory instead of being a place where we receive the healing that we need.
Right.
I heard it say it this way, that the church can be at times a hospital for those that are hurting.
Has to be, because everybody from the pulpit to the last pew is going through struggles. Doesn't mean that a leader should be vulnerable in a way of losing proper boundaries. But it does mean, though, that if that leader is going to be honest, he can share some of his own struggles in the process of ministry. Jesus said, when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, you shall be my witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't even say speak in tongues, which I believe in.
Mm-hmm.
He said, you shall be
Mm-hmm.
my witnesses, not do witnessing. Some people are trying to do witnessing. But if you really embody living in your story and are honest about your struggle in it, you become a witness.
Right.
If somebody tells me they're an atheist, my immediate question is, are you mad at God? If there were a God, would you be mad at him?
Mm.
And they go, yeah, because my brother died when I was 8 years old. And how could a God? I said, I've been there.
Yeah.
Even since I've been a believer, I've been mad at him.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk.
Right.
We got to be vulnerable witnesses. We can't come at people like we're gonna put something in them.
Mm-hmm.
These courses in apologetics want to use logic to prove that there's a God. The person needs to experience the God who was present even when they were turning him off.
Wow.
You can't witness to somebody and try to beat them over the head with the Bible. The Bible is written as story. You got all kind of characters in there. Oh, David and Solomon and all these people. And not to mention Peter, James, and John and all the rest of them. In the New Testament, these were human characters living in real life existential situations. And we need to let the word of God speak in imaginative ways to the real lives of people, including the personal, then the family, then the community, and then society in general, and how all of that affects our way of being in the world. I can have really good mental health in terms of standing up for myself individually, still not allow myself to feel the universal trauma that has affected me personally.
Wow.
That has come through racism. So I can be pretty successful in my professional life in some ways because I'm aggressive enough,
Right.
still not allow myself to feel the connection to my own people, and therefore also feel a broader connection to humanity from a perspective of I'm not going to cooperate with your nonsense, but I'm at the same time, you're not going to make me hate either.
Right.
That ties me up. I can't be strategic when I'm too angry.
Right. Exactly. Listen, this is getting so good. I hope you guys are sharing this. I see all the comments are flooding in, and I'm so happy and excited about that. Please share this. We're getting towards the end. We got one more question, but if you guys have any questions for Pastor Elwood McDowell from a therapist's perspective, please write them in. We're going to have a small Q&A session at the towards the end, so please come in comment your questions, and we're going to try to get to all of them as we possibly can. But we got one more question for you before we turn it over to the Q&A session, Dad. And that question is, how important is the role of community? You kind of touched on this already, but if you can just divulge a little bit deeper and support networks such as those that are provided by the churches, and the mental health and emotional stability of Black men. You kind of going full circle a bit, like you talked about earlier in the earlier church in the New Testament, how they met house to house daily, and how you said you believe it wasn't just scripture reading, but there was vulnerability and talk. There was community. There was fellowship, and that opened the door up for some immediate healing. So the floor is yours, Dad. What is the solution here?
Confess ye your faults one to another, that ye may be healed. I can't be healed without opening up.
Oh my gosh.
And I can't really heal from pain and trauma without someone feeling it somewhat with me. Bear ye one another's burdens, weep with those who weep, rejoice with those who rejoice. I don't need anybody to fix or interpret me. I need them to feel what I'm going through with me. And that's real support and community. People get it through 12-step groups because the church doesn't have enough of that kind of transparent fellowship.
Right.
But when I've had the blessing of visiting several times in Africa, both in urban settings and in villages, there's a sense of community that's much stronger. It's starting to be lost in the urban settings more and more. But I mean, if you see your neighbor's light on, even when I was in Dakar, like 20 years ago when I was there, in a city of 4 million people, you see your neighbor's light on at midnight, you just go over there.
Wow.
And they stop doing whatever they're doing to spend time with the neighbor.
Wow.
And we used to be more that way as a people. I could go from house to house in my neighborhood growing up as a kid. We had that kind of African cultural survival in our community. And we've lost a lot of it. Everybody goes into those garage doors and pushes the button, and never the twain shall meet. Everybody's kind of glued to electronic gizmos.
Yep.
And we need community.
Right.
I told people, I've been dealing with people in residential treatment 2 days a week as a consultant for almost 20 years. And I tell them, you got to transport the village you have in here. You got to transport it, as much of it as possible, out there, because you will never stay in recovery.
Right.
Trying to be insular.
Right.
No man is an island, no woman either.
Right.
And we need each other.
Right.
In my anger and disillusionment with people's nonsense in my 20s, I would very seldom trust somebody enough to let them in close. And I was very hard on people. And I realized finally I had to admit to myself that I need people.
Right.
Listen, I don't want to engage people on a surfacey, hypocritical level, but at the same time, I can ask real questions.
Right.
Or talk a bunch of gossip and crap that I'm not interested in. I think I still can engage with them.
Right.
There's nothing better than connecting with, as one European philosopher put it, the authentic subjectivity of another human being.
You're a bad boy, Dad. I'm thinking of, just even on a practical level, you're not going to go through all the rigmarole of setting up a doctor's appointment, getting in your car, driving to the doctor's office, and the doctor is asking, okay, what is wrong with you? And you're sitting in his office and you're going to say nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing's wrong with me. And knowing that something is hurting, knowing something that's broken, knowing that there's an ailment physically with you, but that's the equivalent of what we're doing when we go to community, when we go to church, and we're pretending like there is nothing wrong.
Yeah.
You said it, and something that I've learned from you, away with a lot of these church colloquialisms that, praise the Lord, saints, everything, I'm blessed and highly favored. No, you're not. You're hurting. No,
Right.
you're not. You're bleeding all over the place. And that doesn't mean that we go into our full story right away with that person, because there's a trust. There's we got to build that with everybody. But the realness that we once had with each other,
Right.
the community that we once had with each other, where it wasn't, how can I pray for you? No, I know what to pray for. Now I'm going to put feet to my faith, and I'm going to show up at your doorstep with your doorstep with the needs that you have.
Yeah.
And going back to what we were saying, the church was that, and the church is becoming that again. And I'm excited that I live in an era where the church is becoming once again the epicenter of our community.
Yeah.
It's becoming the one-stop shop of everything that we need, spiritually, physically, and all of the above.
Right.
And so, again, thank you for your time. We do have one question. If you have any more questions, please come in. But we do have one question from from my favorite person, where it is. It's right here. She asked, "What is the significance of the African man who helped Jesus carry the cross?"
Yeah. I
I'm
think
gonna
it's
let
pretty
you head
simple,
there.
because Jews went through 400 years of slavery. African Americans are the only people who went through a lengthy period of slavery. I think it was the reason why I say it that way, of the worst kind of slavery, because there certainly was slavery in Brazil and parts of the islands in Latin America, that ended probably earlier than it did here, but it was still less brutal. Families stayed together, people kept more of their culture intact, and so on. But here, we went through the worst kind of chattel slavery for 260 years, and that formed us to see God as a God who is concerned about justice,
Yes.
who's concerned about how people treat each other during the week, not just how loud they sing on Sunday. And we are with the Jews, helping to carry Jesus's cross.
Wow.
He was a Jew, and he was a product of his people, and he came, as he said, first for them.
Right.
But we helped carry that cross. The first person after Samaria, Judea and Samaria, who was converted was an Ethiopian eunuch.
Yes.
And I think that's also symbolic of the role that Africans in general, but also particularly African Americans, play in the struggle for witnessing to the real God. It's no wonder that the Ku Klux Klan hates, even more than they hate us, they hate Jews, because they witness to a God of justice, and they hate Black people for the same reason. It's an underlying spiritual battle between light and darkness. And we want to give up that witness. We just want to join the empire version of Christianity.
Right.
That only deals with internal spirituality only. And yes, it starts there, but it manifests itself in love and concern for one's neighbor. It's not just some sort of syrupy, sentimental spirituality. That it's no wonder that Richard Allen, the founder of the AME Church, Bishop Richard Allen, and his brother, who were slaves on a plantation in Pennsylvania, treated their slave master with dignity, because he was different than all the other slave masters. He treated them like human beings. He was an atheist and treated them better than the surrounding Christian slave masters, who were mad at him for treating his slaves so well. And he got converted in a Bible study that Richard Allen held at the Big House, and immediately he started making arrangements to free his slaves.
Wow.
Right after conversion. Cultural Christianity is different than following Jesus.
Come on, Dad.
It doesn't mean that I may not sing the same hymns, but it does mean that if I'm really following Jesus, I'm not going to be a slave master.
Wow.
I'm going to make my identity be that of being better than someone else.
Wow. Wow. I hope you're getting these gems that he's dropping, because this is crazy right now. We're going to go one more question. We got one last question, and here we go, Dad. Annette says, could you please speak to the importance of empathy and empathetic leaders as it relates to the absence of Black men in the church? Is it relevant or not?
It's very relevant because if I'm not vulnerable enough to be empathetic towards other Black males and have real conversations with them without judgment, I'm not going to be able to draw them into a relationship with Jesus and the church.
Mm,
And if in the church, I have little or no empathy for the people who are already there,
right.
that much more so. So every Bible study in some way should free us up to be more loving and vulnerable towards each other. That's for the leaders as well as the members. And if it doesn't, why would anyone want to join just an old institution?
I'll put it this way: in every Bible study that I've learned on how you taught us how to conduct one, is what did you receive, and then what did you put down? There's two things that have to go, that has to happen both in a successful, not successful, but in a healthy Bible study, is what did I receive, what did I learn, but also what did I put down that I should not be carrying anymore?
Yeah.
What is it that I'm leaving behind that is I no longer need?
Yeah.
And that's something that we struggle with because we hear, the brother, especially brothers, we're control freaks. Most of us, I should say. I can only speak for myself. I'm a control freak most of the time. And so it's hard to let things go. They say leave it at the foot of the cross, and I'll circle back within like a day or two and see if it's the resolve and try to pick it back up. But just to
Yeah.
leave it there.
Trauma of our lives makes us want to be control freaks.
Mm-hmm.
But, gradually, as we are even sensitive and empathic towards our own selves, we start letting those walls down because of the freedom that grace gives us. And it frees me up to love myself and to love people. And yes, I mean, practically every Bible study of Trinity is a therapy session.
Yes.
Where people feel safe. They feel there's no pressure. It's like it just happens. We don't want to force people to open up. We make it possible by providing an atmosphere. I saw Bishop Jakes do a workshop at a church here in Tucson, because he used to come here every year before he became well known. There were at least 200 or 300 people there. And people felt so safe with him, they got up and talked about their most personal
Wow.
things with a man they'd never hardly ever met. Some of them knew him because he'd been there before.
Right.
But I mean, people talked with other people present about their real lives.
Wow.
The church should be that kind of atmosphere.
Yes.
I'm gonna close. I got to do my
Absolutely.
men's group.
Absolutely.
Quote Tupac's poem on this very issue called. I'll just quote it. Against an attacker, I will boldly take my stand, because my heart will show fear for no man. But for a broken heart, I run with fright, scared to be blind in a vulnerable night. I believe this fear is in every man. Some will acknowledge it, others will fail to understand. There is no fear in shallow hearts, because shallow hearts don't fall apart. But feeling hearts that truly care are fragile to the flow of air. And if I am to be true, then I must give my fragile heart. You may receive it, or you may return it ripped apart.
Wow.
Well,
we thank you for your time, Deb. Thank you. Hey, everyone, show your love. Put a hand clap emoji in there. Give him some hearts, some thumbs up. Give my dad, my mentor, my pastor, this incredible man, giant in the gospel. Show him some love. And I know he has to go. We thank you for your attention, Dad, and we thank you for your time. We love you. And let me give a small plug now, as much as I can. If you live in Southern Arizona, if you don't go to Trinity, if you don't have a church and you don't go to Trinity, listen. All I can say is it is the most loving and healing place you will ever step foot in. I encourage you, if you do not have a church home in Southern Arizona, I dare you to walk in Trinity and see if your life is not changed by the healing powers of God and by the pastoralship of that man right there, Reverend Elwood McDowell. So I know you got to go, Dad. We love you, and we'll see you later.
Love you.
Guys, thank you guys very much, so much. That was incredible. Thank you for all the questions. Thank you for all the comments. It was just amazing guests. It was a wonderful teaching. I really appreciate it. Guys, if you guys have not gotten the book, go ahead and get the book. It is enjoying the conversation. We are doing amazing things. We're having amazing conversations. We're getting asked on different levels to bring the conversation on different platforms, and so we are excited to do so. But we'll leave you with this: that you know what, we are loved by an ever loving God that is concerned not just with our well being, but is also concerned with our mental health. And with that, I'm signing off. This has been another edition of Tay Talks. Oh, I cannot be remiss with that. That I cannot do this. It even feels weird. It feels funny doing this by myself. I can't do this without my better half, without my superwoman that's always been by my side. So I like to thank my beautiful and very supportive wife that has been so instrumental in my life, and I love her dearly. And also for Mother McDowell, that I know that is so supportive and loving towards Reverend McDowell. We cannot be where we're at and do what we do without the community and without the community and being one with our wives. So shout out to our wives. They are amazing, amazing people. And with that, I am signing off, and I love you. And we'll see you next week with another Tate Talks.